Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning in to this, my first Axis and Allies 1914 video. I've played a lot of Axis and Allies Classic. That's what I grew up on. Played some Revised, played some Anniversary Edition, some Europe, some Pacific, some 1942 Second Edition, and just recently I started playing Axis and Allies 1914. And in doing that, I've done some searching online to find some strategy videos, things you should do, things you shouldn't do. And after playing a few games and watching a few videos, I really found those strategy YouTube videos to be lacking. So I thought that I would create my own. Now we're going to be looking at Austria-Hungary today and the opening move for it, which is going to be pretty straightforward because Austria-Hungary goes first, which means that it doesn't matter what anybody else's strategy is, it doesn't interfere with what Austria-Hungary is going to do on the first turn. Now, if you're able to perceive your allies, how well do you think you'll be able to work with them? How well do you think that France, England, Russia, Italy, and so forth will work together? That can come into play, but as far as troop deployment, that really is not going to impact you on your first turn. So, first things first. As Austria, you are in the middle of a lot of things. You've got Russia on one side, you've got Italy on another. Germany's going to want you to help them out against Russia, but the Ottomans are quite weak, as they were historically, and if the Allies are worth anything, they're probably going to try and knock the Ottomans out of the war pretty quickly. And so they're going to need your help. So you can't just be out for yourself. You can't ignore the Ottomans. You need to consider what's happening on that front, because if they collapse, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Now, with that said, there are a few other things that I want to mention before we get into troop movements, purchases, and things like that. I am going to be using tournament rules for this strategy video. The important things to remember as far as that goes is that when moving from friendly territory to friendly territory, your units can move 2 spaces, your land units. When moving from a friendly territory to a territory that you contest, so you have troops there, you can also move 2 territories with your land units. You cannot attack 2 territories over, and you can't reinforce an ally if you don't already have troops contesting that same territory. Also, naval bases, harbors, mined territories, if your ships encounter an enemy mined zone, they must stop. They do not get to pass freely through there. And in addition to that, all countries, not just Russia, face potential economic and political collapse. Practically, really, that's only going to come into play with Russia, Italy, and the Ottomans, because if England or France or Germany or even Austria are in a position where they're facing economic collapse, that probably means that that side, whether it's allies or central powers, is in a lot of trouble, and unless they have one of their opponents in a similar position, they probably should surrender at that point. The only countries that run the risk of potentially being knocked out early through political or economic collapse are Italy, the Ottoman Empire, and Russia. So with that said, let's get things underway. So as Austria, you're going to end up fighting at least a 2-front war. You're going to be fighting Italy over here, you're going to be fighting Russia over here. Neither of those 2 countries start with a fighter, and you have a lot of artillery, so a fighter is going to help you a great deal. Now, Russia, with its production, it may choose to buy a fighter, in which case you'd be on even ground. Italy has a lot less production than you have, and if you're pressing them hard up in Venice, it's going to be very difficult for them to afford a fighter, so you will almost always be able to obtain air supremacy there, which is going to help you knock Italy out of the war quickly. So what I would recommend on your first turn as Austria, and this is pretty standard, is to go with one fighter and then a combination of artillery and infantry. So that's going to be 2 artillery and 4 infantry to max yourself out. The Allies have a major production advantage in this game, so the Central Powers really need to take advantage of their strategic location and their firepower early on, which means you do not want to be sitting on cash. You want to spend it as quickly as possible, get your units to the front, and push on as hard as you can. Now, opening moves as Austria. You have to attack Serbia. That's actually in the rules, believe it or not. And what I like to do is not just attack Serbia, but eliminate Serbia. Get that threat, this whole threat to your southern flank here taken care of. So we're going to move guys from Budapest down there. That should be more than enough to take them out. An argument could be made for sending fewer of them. What I would recommend, just make sure that statistically you are likely to wipe out the entire Serbian force in the first round. If you do that and you want to send extra troops somewhere else, by all means, that's fine. Just make sure that you take Serbia out on that turn. Now, you also need to worry about Poland up here. Now, maybe you're saying, I can't wipe them out, or, you know, they'll counterattack and reinforce, and then I'll be in a lot of trouble. That's fine, because Germany is also going to come and reinforce you. And so I would recommend sending everything in that can get to Poland. Actually, those guys can't get there. Sorry about that. All the guys that can get to Poland, send them there, bog the Russians down. Yes, they'll counterattack, but they probably won't be able to wipe out your entire force, which means it'll be contested. It's less production they get. It also ties them up and forces them to divert forces up here. And then the Germans will move over here, and it really doesn't matter how many forces the Russians send in. If you, Austria, and Germany are committed, you'll be able to overpower Russia within a few turns. And that's good. Now, I've heard an argument made for attacking Romania. Now, I disagree with this move. I disagree with it because if you attack Romania, there are a couple of things that can happen. Let's say you attack it, but you didn't want to send too many units, and your attacking force gets wiped out. Now, this entire flank is exposed. You'll have to send reinforcements there to protect it because there are Russian troops here. Let's say you attack it, and you don't lose all your units, but you don't take the territory. So now you're bogged down, and you could be sending those troops somewhere else. Furthermore, Russia, at the beginning of its turn, now has units here before the Ottomans' turn, which means if they don't want to threaten this, they can try and attack this and weaken the Ottoman position. Maybe that's good for you in Germany, because that means that you have fewer forces up north, but you too can handle those forces. It doesn't really cause you a problem if Russia starts funneling a lot of troops there. You'll just end up killing them all within a few turns. But it hurts the Ottoman Empire tremendously if Russia has units in Romania at the beginning of its turn. And it really doesn't help you out either. It just exposes your flank, and if you want to take it on your first turn, you would have to commit quite a few forces to it, and it really isn't going to strengthen you a whole lot. And I'll get more into that here in a little bit when we do our non-combat moves, which I know all take place on the same turn. That's something I had to get used to a little bit compared to other Axis and Allies games, but I'll explain what we're going to do there here in just a minute. Because we've got Italy, we've got to take care of Italy. Now, what I like to do is kind of a 1-2 punch with Italy. Try and hurt them really bad early on. Force France to either reinforce Italy or put Italy in a position where it's going to take it a turn or two to cause any type of notable threat to anybody. So I like to send these troops down to Venice. Now we're also going to send our troops from Trieste over there. But with these two remaining, we've got 1 infantry, 1 artillery, we're going to move them. Sorry, I neglected to include the Austrian Navy, but there's a battleship with a transport and a cruiser over here. We're going to transport them over to Tuscany to fight 1 infantry. So we'll get a coastal bombardment. There's no Italian artillery that gets to fire at us, and we are attacking with 2 3s, whereas they're defending with 1 3. So chances are we will take that territory. We might take Venice, but it's probably going to be contested. But that means that Italy only has these troops that it can move in to reinforce. Austria, with the units that it puts down at the end of this turn, will be able to reinforce with that. And with the higher production, it's a battle of attrition that Italy can't win. These troops from Rome will get there eventually, but instead of being able to zip up there in a single turn because of tournament movement rules, they'll have to go here first, fight that out, and then the next turn move up here. By that point, Austria probably will have control over that, and that's going to change that entire scope. And if things really, if Austria really needs some help, or the Central Powers really want to go after Italy, Germany could always send a few troops down here. Now it can't move 2 spaces into Venice when it's still contested, unless they have their own unit there. But if Austria takes it, now it's a friendly territory, now Germany can move troops back and forth at will, which is really going to hurt Italy quite a bit. So what do we do with these troops that we have left? Well, we want to get them to the front as quickly as possible. We don't need to worry about the front with Germany. The front with Italy is secure. Now, one quick note about that: if you think that the Allies are particularly coordinated, or they're very seasoned players, you might leave a troop or 2 back in Trieste. And the reason for that is France could use its navy, land in Albania, get some Italian troops there for free, so then Italy has them at the start of its turn, much like if Austria attacks Romania, Russia has those troops to use at the beginning of its turn. But in this case, France lands here, Italy gets these troops, now Italy can march on Trieste on its turn. If you don't think the Allies are going to be particularly coordinated, or they're not especially apt or adept at this game, then maybe that's something you don't need to worry about, but that is something to consider because you are exposed on that flank. Now that wouldn't be hard. You could either leave somebody behind up by Venice, or you, for your non-combat moves, you could move a guy or 2 down from Venice. It really doesn't matter as long as they're there at the end of your turn. Now, we won't be rolling any dice because all these non-combat takes place at the same time as combat. So where do we want to move these guys up in Bohemia and Vienna? Well, we want to get them to the front. This front is secure. This front down here is secure. This front over here is the only one we need to worry about. Now, we didn't attack Romania, so if Russia moves in here and gets troops, it's not able to attack. It can't zip through there, it can't move in, get Romanian troops, and then have the Romanian troops attack. This whole front is secure. We need nobody here because we didn't attack it. So instead, we're going to move all our remaining units into Galatia. And there's a couple reasons for that. First, it's the only territory on the front that can really be threatened, and that only by Ukraine. Second, Germany is going to move in on Poland. Well, I'm sorry, Russia will move in on Poland first, then Germany will move in on Poland, and then it'll be our turn to move in on Poland if the situation calls for it. So we'll have maximum firepower to destroy whatever Russia sends into that Polish meat grinder. But let's say that Russia wants to do something else. Well, now it can't really attack Galicia because it's too heavily defended. If Russia moves into Romania, which it will on its first turn, and get some units there, we can always start then diverting guys down here if we need to. But there's no reason to put troops where we don't need them at this point, when if Budapest is threatened, we'll have plenty of time to move them there and reinforce. So let's say, we're going to do these battles, we're going to lose some troops here, Russia will lose some troops, Italy will lose some troops, we'll lose some troops, Italy will lose its troop, we'll probably take Tuscany. That's probably what things are going to look like at the end of your turn. Now, of course, we're going to put all of our units in Vienna, of course, because that's in the rules. But Vienna is, even if we didn't have to put them in their capital, in this case, Vienna is a perfect location because it borders Galicia, so if we need to reinforce there, we're good. As long as our troops aren't wiped out in Poland by our next turn, we could zip them up there to reinforce in addition to everything in Galicia. We could get them over to Budapest if we need to reinforce there, not a problem. We could send them over to Venice, so pretty much any front that we have here, we can get those troops to. Now, depending on what your opponents do by your second turn, that'll determine where your fighter wants to go. I like to buy a second fighter, that way I have one for the Italian front and one for the Russian front. If Russia buys a fighter, then it's debatable, maybe Austria buys another fighter on its turn, it just depends. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. But this, to me, is a very strong Austrian start. It forces Russia up into this meat grinder over here where it cannot win. It will take a few rounds, but it will be defeated, opening the road to Russia over here and potentially weakening up its other fronts. It means that it's going to be delayed in getting troops down by the Ottomans, which means that by the time Russia gets Romania, the Ottomans will turn around and get Bulgaria, and there'll either be a stalemate or the Ottomans, because they have limited focus, can then push into Romania potentially if the Austria-German meat grinder pulls enough Russian troops away, which means that somehow the Ottomans end up with production, which is great for them, and it's really bad for Russia, because that's pretty much the only direction the Ottomans are going to go early in game. And it also puts the Ottomans in a better position to fight England and any other allies if they decide they want to gang up on the Ottomans. So it's very important to consider that when you're the Austrians. It's not just you in Germany. All the Central Powers really need to work together to maximize their effectiveness. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope that you find it useful, and I would ask that any of you have comments, recommendations. I am still in the learning stages of this game, but I played a lot of other versions of Axis and Allies, so if anyone has any recommendations, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I would greatly appreciate it, because I hope this video helps other people improve their gameplay, but I also want to improve my gameplay as well. And I hope to produce a few other videos for starting turns. Russia and then Germany and France and England and the Ottomans and Italy and the US, the whole bunch. But I figured the best place to start is with Austria. So with that, I'm going to sign off, and thanks for watching, everybody.